I'm sitting in civil procedure class. It is the second day of law school, and a classmate answered a question from the professor using the term in personam jurisdiction. So the professor then asks the student if he knew what that phrase meant. Well, of course, he didn't know. It's the second day of law school. We were lucky to find a place to park. So the professor then says, don't ever come into my classroom without having looked up a word that you come across in a case that you're reading that you aren't familiar with. And so the student says, okay, I won't. And the teacher says, I want you to look that up. And he says, all right, I'll do that. And the professor says, I want you to look it up now. So we're all sitting in the class, and the kid gets up and he goes to the library. And this is a big law school, right? The library wasn't close to where we were. So we sit there in the classroom while he goes and looks up the definition to that word, and we are in total silence. The professor is just staring at us, and I'm wanting to hide. It is one of the most uncomfortable stretches of 10 minutes of my entire life. She just looks at us smiling, the professor. So the student gets back and she says, well, what does it mean? And he says, well, it means personal jurisdiction. It's the court's jurisdiction over a person. And she says, very good. And then she just goes on like nothing happened. So I look over to the student next to me and I say, we're all going to die. Well, we didn't die, and you won't either. But what should you expect in law school? Well, you're about to find out. I'm Joshua Roberts, attorney at law, and you are watching Lawyer Up. So if you're watching this video, then you're interested in becoming a lawyer. My first question would be, what in the hell is wrong with you? Just kidding, just kidding. If you are contemplating going to law school, whether you are in high school or college or beyond, or you're just curious about the process, this video is for you. We're going to talk about the prerequisites for what you have to do to get into law school. We're going to talk about what each year of law school entails. We're going to take a quick look at the core classes that every single lawyer has to take at every single law school. We're going to look at what to expect inside the classroom and what you need to be doing outside of the classroom to make sure you are putting yourself in the best position to get a job as an attorney right out of law school. And of course, we are going to talk about the bar exam and how to prepare for that, and much, much more in today's episode. If you enjoy the episode, hit that like button. If you got something to say, put it in the comment sections below. Let me know why you are thinking about going to law school. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified every time we upload. And as always, I love it when you guys share me on social media. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joshua Roberts. I'm an attorney practicing in the state of Missouri. I went to law school at the University of Missouri-Columbia and graduated in 1998. I've been practicing law since that time, and I'm now in my 23rd year. So let's talk about what to expect when you're expecting to go to law school. First, what do you have to do to get into law school? Initially, you have to graduate high school and then graduate from a 4-year college with a degree. And the degree really doesn't matter. Major in something that interests you, because having a good GPA is more important than, say, majoring in poli-sci. Because the law that you learn in law school is so much more advanced than anything you learn in college that any collegiate level law class is essentially useless when you get to law school anyway. And I'm not saying don't take business law as an undergrad. I'm just saying that your advantage over those who haven't taken that evaporates in about 2 days of law school. It is generally advisable to have at least a 3.0 GPA in college if you're going to apply for law school. Obviously, the more prestigious the law school, the higher the GPA you're going to need to get in, but somebody somewhere will take you if you have a 3.0. In conjunction with the application process, you also have to submit an LSAT score. It is similar to the ACT or the SAT test that you take to get into college. However, this one is more focused on the legal thought process. With the SAT, it is a multiple choice examination that is supposed to measure the level of readiness of a student for college. And it's a tool that allows a university to compare all of their applicants using a similar gauge. So it eliminates the "my high school was more difficult than your high school" banter. The sections of that test include reading, writing and language, and math, and there's an optional essay portion as well. The LSAT is a similar test for potential law students. These sections include a logical reasoning section, which involves reading a passage and then analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of the evidence presented. There's an analytical reasoning section, and these are those logic games where they give you an incomplete fact set, and then you have to determine which camper took the green canoe and the red paddle on Thursday. There's also a reading comprehension section and an essay portion to gauge your writing ability. There's no math on the LSAT. Thank goodness, right? They say if you're good at math, go to med school. If you ain't, go to law school. But again, I'm just kidding. So let's say you've done all that. You've graduated high school, college, taken the LSAT, submitted your applications, and you've been accepted to law school. Well, what the heck happens now? Well, first of all, law school is only 3 years as opposed to high school or college, but it is the most intense 3 years of your academic life. The actual practice of law is way easier than law school, and you get paid. So after 3 years, if all goes well, you'll graduate with a Juris Doctorate degree. But that doesn't make you a licensed lawyer. You then have to pass the bar exam, which is the state licensing exam that qualifies you to act as an attorney in a particular state where you are licensed. More on that later. So what happens in the meantime? So let's take a closer look at what you can expect during your law school career. Your first year as a student, you're referred to as a 1L. Second year, a 2L, and third year, a 3L. Most students consider the first year of law school to be the most difficult. The material is more complex than what you're used to, and it must be learned rapidly. What's more, the way students are taught and tested is very different from high school or undergrad. I compare the jump in curriculum difficulty level from college to law school to being something like going from junior high to college without ever attending high school. It is significantly more difficult. Though every law school is different, there are certain things you can expect from your first year of law school, both inside and outside of the classroom, wherever you go. So let's talk about what happens inside the classroom during your first year of law school. Now, most law schools don't allow students to choose any of their first year classes, and usually only a couple during the first semester of year 2. Rather, the vast majority of students take the same foundational classes in all law schools. So let's go through each one. The first is civil procedure. This focuses on the litigation process in the United States. These are the procedural rules of how you go about conducting a lawsuit. How do you file a petition, serve it? How do you file motions and pleadings and discovery, which are interrogatories and requests for production of documents? What is the pretrial, trial, and appellate procedures? As I mentioned, this is the rule book for how you conduct a civil lawsuit. Now, it has nothing to do with the actual law that is involved in your case. That could be a car wreck or a contract dispute or real estate matter. This is just how the game is played to resolve that underlying legal matter. Most states' civil procedure book is thicker than the Bible, so there are literally thousands of rules that govern how lawsuits are conducted, and this class teaches you about those rules. Constitutional law. This class provides an introduction to the U.S. Constitution with an emphasis on Supreme Court decisions. The course explores the modes of constitutional analysis and includes topics such as the role of the judiciary in reviewing acts of other branches of government, separation of powers, and obviously the individual constitutional rights. You'll read these long Supreme Court cases, sometimes 50 or 60 pages long, only to discover what is sometimes a very simple constitutional truth. Like, oh, so I just spent 4 hours reading a case, and now I know that you can't discriminate against somebody based upon their skin color. It's like, couldn't you have just told me that up front? Nope, that's not how law school works. Moving on to contracts. This provides an overview of the formation of contracts and binding agreements, offer, acceptance, consideration, the damages associated with violating the contract, which is called a breach, and the defenses thereto. The class sounds pretty simple. I can promise you it ain't. Some of the contract issues you study in law school will make your brain hurt. Criminal law. That's the examination of the rules and policies for enforcing punitive sanctions, and that's prison or fines against individuals accused of committing criminal offenses. This is where you learn the subtle differences between all of the various degrees of murder and assaults and kidnappings and all of the horrible things associated with criminal law, and the defenses available to those allegations. Like, nah, man, it was self-defense. Criminal law is actually one of the most interesting first-year classes that you take. Next is criminal procedure, which sounds like civil procedure just in the criminal context, but it is not. It is an examination of the Bill of Rights guarantees to those charged with criminal violations. It includes their rights to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, the right to remain silent to an attorney, the right to a speedy and public trial, no double jeopardy, due process, etc., etc. This is where you learn that the government needs a warrant to search your property unless one of these, say, 12 different exceptions to the warrant requirement apply, which gets really confusing. In law school, you read lots of cases where the rights of defendants are violated. In real life, getting an actual motion to suppress, sustain regarding a constitutional violation happens very few and far between. Next is legal research and writing. This class provides detailed instructions regarding how to research the law and write memoranda dealing with various legal topics. Historically, this was done in libraries by poring through hardback books. But with modern search engines and legal databases, it takes a lot of the heavy lifting out of the research component. You still need to know how to write well and in a format that you routinely see in the legal profession. Research and writing is an acquired skill, but you learn it primarily by reading hundreds of cases written in the same basic format, and this class helps with that process. Property law examines the legal relationship between people and land, buildings, natural resources, and personal objects. It examines all of the different ways you can own property, joint tenants, tenants in common, etc., and how property is legally transferred. And it makes sense until you get to the rule against perpetuities, which seems straightforward. I can't dictate the use of a piece of property forever or in perpetuity. For example, I can't say that my house shall be painted purple until the end of time. Otherwise, people who died 100 years ago could still dictate how the living use a particular piece of property. So the rule avoids dead hand control over the living. Anyway, it sounds straightforward, but it is not. Determining just how long you can control a piece of property after your death, that's where it gets complicated. I'm still not entirely convinced I understand it, so if you go to law school and you figure it out, hit me up. Last but not least is torts. This class deals with civil wrongs and explores the methods and policies for allocating losses due to damage to one's person, property, or economic interests. This course covers the various claims and defenses. This is the stuff of personal injury law, negligence, but it also covers things like professional malpractice, product liability, defamation, invasion of privacy, and damage to personal property. Nobody goes to jail in tort law. It's civil, so the remedy is money. So that's a basic broad overview of what a 1L will learn in his or her first year of law school. So now let's talk about how you're going to learn it. In your first year, you'll be taught the law through the case method approach. In short, your textbooks will include judicial opinions from across the company without any accompanying explanations or summaries. There's just a really long, complex case, and then there's a bunch of questions that you really can't even answer at the end. Now, you'd think they would just boil it all down to a short description of the black letter law that you're supposed to remember, and they will eventually in bar review books when you're studying for the bar exam, but not now. So you have to go through and brief each case in order to summarize it and understand it. And in briefing a case, you will write down the style of the case, which is the case name, the year it was decided, and the court who decided it. Then you move to the facts of the case, and that is just factually what happened. In January of 2019, the defendant T-boned the plaintiff, causing severe injuries. Facts can be simple or they can be extremely complicated depending upon the scenario. Then you summarize the procedural history of the case, whether the case went to trial, who won, what the damage amounts were, any type of appellate history or arguments on appeal, just the procedural history of the case. Next, you will want to identify the issue the court is deciding, and this is the point of legal dispute, and many times there are more than one. Then you will state the holding. This is how the court resolved the legal issue. The holding is really what you're looking for because it's where the court applies the law to the facts and decides the issue. Next, you will recite the rationale, which is why the court decided what they did. And finally, the disposition, which is who won or who lost. The first time you do this, your written summary will be about as long as the case itself. But by your third year, you won't be writing case briefs at all, but rather just marking in your textbooks next to the areas that represent the facts and the holding and the disposition so that you can just read the highlights out of the textbook if you're called upon by the professor. Now, just a word about summary books and services, which you will learn about when you go to law school. These are books and online services that brief the cases for you. They get the textbook, they brief all of the cases, and then they sell you the summaries, right? It's Cliff Notes for law school. Most actual practicing lawyers will discourage law students from purchasing these books. I'm not going to discourage you because I used them when I was in law school, but you shouldn't rely exclusively on them during your first year. Read the cases, fight through them, write your own briefs because that's how you learn. Then compare your briefs to the summaries to make sure you didn't miss anything. Because when you get out into the real world and you are on your own, you don't have some publishing company to tell you what every case is supposed to mean. So we talked about what you will learn and how you will learn it. Now let's turn to what happens in the classroom. The class period will be spent analyzing the cases you have read and discussing how they relate to other cases. They say for every hour in class, you should spend 2 hours preparing for class. It usually will take more time than that during your first semester, but a lot less time than that as you get the hang of things. So class is where the teachers tell you what the law is, right? Nope. That's your job. And one of the methods that law professors use to ensure you learn the material yourself is the Socratic method. The Socratic method is a teaching method where professors ask a series of questions and then follow-up questions and then more questions of students. So the teaching is actually gleaned from your fellow classmates' answers to these questions. The process is intended to expose flaws in your thought processes and then to gradually guide you toward a more solid conclusion. And this isn't like grade school where the teacher asks a question and people raise their hands. The teacher or professor will randomly select the student who is up for the questioning period. And you don't get just one question. You get asked an entire series of questions. This can go on for 20 or 30 minutes with just one student. It gives you incentive to be prepared, because if you don't understand what you're talking about, you will be exposed in front of your entire class. And heaven forbid what happens if you haven't read the case at all. Don't let that be you. As I explained in the introduction, it can be ugly. While first-year law students dread the Socratic method, most come to appreciate the experience and recognize its valuable role in preparing them for the courtroom. So let's talk about grades. In law school, there really isn't a lot of busy work. There are no chapter exams. There's no attendance taken. Come to class, don't come to class. Learn the material, don't learn the material. Teachers don't care. For most of your first year classes, you'll have one exam at the end of the semester, which will be your entire grade for the whole class. You get one shot. So there's lots of pressure, and you can't just learn it at the end or cram. It's an entire semester of complicated material. So you have to keep up, or it is absolutely overwhelming. The exception to this is the legal research and writing course, in which you'll have several graded written assignments throughout the semester. This class is more akin to what you are used to in college, only a lot harder. So now let's talk about what happens outside of the classroom during your first year of law school. For most law students, the first year is a bonding experience. Students bond through common backgrounds, similar interests, and goals. But mostly, students bond through the shared traumatic experience of law school. It's like surviving a natural disaster together. And that's the good part. Unfortunately, while you will make friends quickly, you will also start to realize that there's far more competition among students than in high school or college. Lots of classes are graded on a true curve. I had teachers that would give out 1 or 2 low A's per class to the best exams out of, say, 150, and it went down from there. So it is really cutthroat. And your class rank dictates the honor groups you're eligible for, like making the school's law review journal. It will dictate what type of internships will be available to you, and ultimately the highest paying jobs are reserved for those at the very top of each class, which is usually the top 10%. The competition stems from the fact that many lower ranking graduates often find it hard to get a desirable job, or sometimes even a law job at all. So it's competitive, but so is the practice of law. There's winners and there's losers. It's okay. You will be fine. Just go in with your eyes wide open and your sleeves rolled up, ready to work. Also, a little bit of a life tip during your first year. The competitive atmosphere of law school will make you anxious at first. There's really no two ways about it. If you aren't anxious when you start law school, you are an idiot and you will probably fail, because being anxious is normal, but you have to manage it. One of the best ways is to exercise every day. Do something. Even if it's just to walk around your apartment complex, do something. Also, set aside one night a week to forget about law school, Friday or Saturday, and do something that you like to do. For many in law school, that's drinking. But whatever it is, get away from the law and have some fun. Also, do not get a job. Your first year of law school is too much to also hold a job. If you have to borrow money to live, then so be it. You can pay it off in a hurry when you graduate. A job for a 1L is usually a recipe for failure. You may make a buck or two now, but your class rank will suffer later. So that is the first year. In the second year, we say, hey, well done. You have made it to your second year of law school. Most students find their second year a lot easier than their first year. By the time you get to be a 2L, you know what to expect and you know you're capable of rising to the various challenges. Unfortunately, while most law students find their second year easier, they also find it busier. So let's talk about what happens inside the classroom during your second year of law school. During the second year, you will pick most of your classes. And when selecting courses, law students generally consider one of two things. Number one, whether the class is related to the practice area they intend to pursue. Are you going to be a criminal lawyer? Are you going to be a corporate lawyer? Are you going to be a tax lawyer? And number two, whether the class covers a bar exam subject. because even if you don't intend to practice in a certain area, you need to know the information if it's going to be on the bar exam. Now, the bar exam is the licensing test that is a 2-day, 12-hour exam that is a living hell, but more on that later. As a consequence of students being able to choose their own classes, you'll notice the class discussion intends to improve during the second year, and many teachers stop using the Socratic method as well. It's similar to getting into your major in college, where you have class with people with similar interests, and the material is easier to digest because you're interested in what the teachers are actually talking about. First-year classes provide an overview of the subject matter, whereas second-year classes dig deeper into relevant issues. Outside of the classroom during your second year of law school, continue to exercise, continue to get away from law school at least one night a week, and now you can consider working part-time or participating in some extracurricular activities. I played intramural sports my second year of law school. Many law students will choose to participate in moot court competitions, take part-time jobs, or edit legal journals. Finally, in your second year of law school, you'll begin to think more seriously about finding the right summer internship. The summer internship between your second and third year is particularly important because it may lead to a job offer after your graduation. Then comes year 3, and you are a 3L. You are a seasoned pro. You are no longer the anxious student you were when you walked into your first law school class. Unfortunately, you're about to experience a new kind of stress as you turn your attention to passing the bar exam and finding a job. Most of your classes at this point are seminar classes with your future field of practice or in a bar exam subject. In addition, many third-year law students will work in a legal clinic. A legal clinic is a program that is organized through a law school that allows you to receive credits for doing real legal work for real clients. Generally, these are small claims court cases for low-income clients in the area. You will work under the supervision of a licensed attorney, and it is great experience on some less complicated or less serious cases. It's kind of like getting your learner's permit to drive. At the end of your third year, you will be graduating from law school, which doesn't guarantee you anything but a piece of paper. Simply getting a Juris Doctorate degree does not license you to practice law. You have to pass the licensing exam, which is the bar exam. So, in addition, third-year law students must start focusing on 4 things: a bar review course, the bar exam itself, the professional responsibility exam, and finding a job. To review for the bar exam, most students will take a bar review course. These are offered by most law schools after graduation, but before the bar exams in the summer. And remembering that licensing for attorneys is on a state-by-state basis, it's important to do a bar review in the state where you plan to take the bar, because they will be teaching you what is on that state's bar exam. The bar exam itself. In your third year, you will begin working on your state bar application. This means you'll have to decide where you plan to take the bar and where you plan to practice. States license attorneys on a state-by-state basis, as I said. So while I am a lawyer in Missouri, I am not a licensed attorney in any other state. The bar exam itself is a 12-hour, 2-day test that consists of multiple choice and essay questions. The multi-state portion is on general law that is applicable in most states. Then there is an essay exam portion that's usually specific to that state's laws. So the multi-state portion can be used in other states if you score high enough so that you don't have to retake that portion of the exam if you wish to be licensed in multiple states. But usually you still have to take the essay portion of the exam in the state you want to be licensed in. Some states do offer what's called reciprocity. So if you're licensed in one state, you can apply to be licensed in another without retaking the bar exam, but that usually only comes after several years of actual legal experience. Finally, many third-year law students will take the multi-state professional responsibility exam, the MPRE. This is just an exam about the ethics and professional responsibility. It's required for licensure, but it's pretty easy. You can take it during your third year. Many do so that they don't have to take it right after taking the bar exam. And in the midst of all of this, you still need to find a job. Hopefully, you will receive and accept a job offer from your internship. If not, you'll want to begin scheduling interviews with law firms and legal organizations that are hiring. Do not wait until after you've passed the bar. Then it's too late. Start working on a job during your third year of law school. After you take the bar exam in the summer, most law graduates will actually start working for the law office that hired them. There's about a 3-month waiting period after you take the bar exam until the results are announced that you will be working at a law job even though you're not actually licensed. This is a little bit unnerving because if you don't ultimately pass the bar, that almost always means that you lose your job because no one wants to pay lawyer wages to an unlicensed attorney. But that won't be you. The vast majority of people pass the bar exam the first time, and after you are sworn in by a judge, you are licensed to practice law. So that is the process. Law school is intimidating, but the more you know about it before you start, the less scary it is. And believe it or not, most law students look back at their law school years fondly. So try to relax and enjoy the ride. That's the episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you learned something, hit that like button for me. If you got something to say, you got a question about law school, put it in the comment sections below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would encourage you to do so now. Smash that subscribe button for me. And last but not least, I love it when you guys share me on social media. That's all for today's episode. My name is Joshua Roberts, attorney at law, and you've been watching Lawyer Up.
Send lawyers, guns, and money.